Yeah, so I started working with Bruce in early 2020. So I kind of had the financial logistics of my business set. I could pull reports in QuickBooks and kind of keep an eye on, different aspects of the business. And then we had a tax accountant who could kind of prepare everything and send in our taxes at the end of the tax year. But once I had all that in place, I realized that the numbers were probably telling me more than I, in fact, knew how to read. Like I could tell if we were profitable. I could look at different business lines. There was stuff I could tell in the numbers that was useful from a management perspective, but I could just tell there was information there that I just wasn't equipped and didn't have the background to get at. I didn't know I needed the strategic side of the financials until I had the logistics side of the financials handled. So before working with Bruce, I had my numbers in order, but my numbers weren't really working for me. I've gotten so many results out of working with Bruce and out of thinking about my money this way, really understanding kind of the financial drivers of the business. But one was real specific clarity into what it takes to grow the business. I'll never forget when we were working together in 2021, I was trying to figure out, we were going to have a little bit of excess capital and I was trying to figure out what to do with it. And I came into a meeting and I said to Bruce, listen, if we're going to have this extra capital and we can kind of be our own, venture capitalist, where should we put the money in the business? And I was expecting, I don't know, some different answer than what we've been talking about. And he looked at his model and he said, well, do you want to put it into leads? Do you want to put it into sales conversions? Do you want to put it into getting more business from clients? And I realized that the framework we're working from, frankly, gives me all of the drivers for growing the business. And then part of my job as a leader is to decide, how fast do we want to grow? How aggressively do we want to grow? And what do we have to put in to do that? So I really got that understanding very deeply from working with him. I get so many benefits out of working together. Bruce and I sit down at the beginning of the year and set goals. We meet once a month to go over how the business is progressing against these goals. And honestly, just those checkpoints would be useful. But I'll say that the whole framework that Bruce uses, frankly, blew my mind in a good way when we sat down to do it and when I really grasped what we were looking at. Before I started working with Bruce, I knew that I had goals. I had revenue goals, I had profitability goals, and I knew I was doing things that contributed to them. But what Bruce's system does is really, it takes the inputs that result in revenue or the decisions and choices that result in profitability, and it breaks it down into a series of very clear categories. So that if I say to myself, well, I really want to increase revenue this year, it isn't this blanket kind of vague target. I actually have very specific questions I'm going to ask myself. Okay, well, what drives revenue? These 6 or so things that we track. Okay, given that those things some of them are easier to improve, some of them are harder to improve, what are you going to improve revenue? Are you going to increase the number of leads you bring in the door? Well, that's a business decision about marketing. Are you going to improve your conversion rate? Well, that's a sales skills question. Are you going to try and get more business from your existing clients? That's a different question altogether. Are you going to try and sell more per transaction to people? So what I really love about working with Bruce is it takes this kind of very large and sometimes overwhelming goal that I have of growing a business profitably. And it literally breaks it down into a series of very manageable, very plannable, very achievable business goals that ultimately results in the numbers that I'm looking at. And quite frankly, we can set the goals. We can check on our progress monthly, so I'm never surprised. I should never get to the end of the year and think, wow, we really missed our revenue target. What happened? No, I've been looking at it every month and deciding, does something in the business need attention if a number is off? So it's been hugely beneficial, just in the sense it has given me a much more sophisticated way to think about the numbers in my business, and more access to ideas for how to get where I'm going. It's just given me a whole toolbox to work with. Last year, we set goals and I was kind of on track every month to meet every one of them. Now, some of that has to do with the market. A lot of that has to do with people in the business working really hard. But it was really interesting because every month we were on track to meet the goals. So when we sat down to meet the goals for this year, we looked at each other and I said, let's set these higher. Let's figure out how to get more leads. Let's figure out how to get more sales conversions. And it really gave me the toolbox to kind of see what does it look like to try and put a rocket engine on the business. Bruce helped me get really comfortable with hiring. Before I was working with Bruce, I kind of was going on gut feeling when it came to hiring. I thought the business was growing and I hoped that it was growing enough to cover the amount of people I was bringing in. In the time that I've been working with Bruce, the business has actually grown from about 12 people to almost 30. But what was great was I called up Bruce. I was maybe 2 or 3 months into working together. I said, the business is growing. I want to hire. I think I can hire, but can you help me think about this? And he sat down and actually wrote me a model for thinking about it that we still use today. And that let me hire with a lot of confidence. It didn't, I wasn't up at night thinking, can I meet the payroll? I was able to see the business increase, look at the numbers with him, make hiring and staffing decisions, and then just move forward. Quite frankly, I think if I hadn't had that, I might have been overly conservative and not hired as many people in time. And, either our team wouldn't have been sufficient to staff the business or everybody would have been really run down. So that was a huge help.